navigating galaxies from our PC screens, exploring new worlds and cosmic sights. Join our crew and enjoy the flight.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I am Captain Barbosa, and joined with me is Cmdr.Trusin, and we're doing this little podcast here called Astro-Nots. And Trusin, why don't you open it up? You're the one that had the idea. Why are we doing this podcast?
Because we talk about this stuff all the time anyway, and I thought, hey, we should record ourselves talking about it.
And this stuff is like our space games and our survival craft games and all the crappy theories that we come up with.
Right. And it all started when I ran into you in the game Pulsar, Lost Colonies.
The one that we're actually in right now.
Yeah, we are. We're just hanging out, just looking around.
But so we met, I'm just going to give the audience like a quick rundown, but we met 7 to 8 years ago, roughly, and we were playing this game, and I was just like, I hated playing this game at randoms because I'm like, I get it, but like I'm trying to captain, and people didn't know what they're doing, or they weren't listening, or one guy was actually drunk, like piloting, but then you showed up in one of my games, and what was different?
So I really liked how you captained, because you acted like a captain, where every other game that I played with people, they would try to do all the roles, right? And they would be doing everything. And I'm like, the way the game is built, it's the asymmetrical roles is what makes it fun, which is like, you have your captain, you have your helmsman, you have your engineer, you have your science officer, and they all have tasks to do. And you could,
and weapons.
I could go up and I could steer the ship if I absolutely needed to as an engineer, but I shouldn't. It's not my job. Right.
Yeah.
So, the way you barked out orders and the way that, your bridge presence, I want to say your bridge presence was very cinematic. It drew me into the game, and in a way that I had not yet been drawn into the game. So yeah, I absolutely love that about your play style.
Well, I was trying to make friends because I wanted to actually do this game with like people that were into it, and I started realizing like if you play Pulsar, it's gonna feel like your very own episode of Star Trek with the people that you're playing with. And so I'm like, you know what? Some people role play. I'm gonna be like a big friggin' nerd. I'm gonna role play the captain, and like I just finished watching all of TNG, so I had all Captain Picard jargon in my head, like engage and all that stuff. And you were just there for one of the more successful missions, man. I was just like, all right, let's get the jump drive prep. Let's line up to 742, and then go ahead and hit engage once that's loaded.
Back then I was just known as Trusin, and it was after I met you and started really taking my engineer role seriously that I became a commander.
Well, yeah, and I called you that because like I'm captain, right? And I was watching TNG, and it's Commander LaForge, and he's like the main engineer. And I'm like, well, let's have Cmdr.Trusin, because you're like always the main engineer. So I just started calling you that, and plus you play every game with me that's survival craft and somewhat space themed. So it's me and you, man. You're like my number one.
We're kindred space spirits.
Yes, we are. We're never gonna make it to space, so we're not astronauts. We're astronauts.
What's your favorite part about Pulsar? Like what draws you to this game so much?
I love when it gets hectic. Like when you watch a Star Trek scene, it's obviously scripted, but stuff starts going down and everybody's figuring stuff out. Now, when this game gets hectic, whether you're in a space battle or you're actually on an away mission, you have to kind of corral everyone before the chaos like sets in and nobody does anything productive. So when things would like start hitting the ship, or we'd be getting into like an unexpected battle, or we were trying to sneak by something and all of a sudden we're in a battle, it's like, all right, shields up, let's send some fuel capsules to science. If you can give us a shield booster on the computer, pilot, I need you to get in range of target A, and Trusin, make sure you keep the engine from overheating because we're going hot. We have to go with everything we got. And that's like, I could just riff that off, man. Like, but that's actual gameplay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, life support's on fire,
Can someone please repair life support? Trusin, are you close? All right. I'll keep firing the secondary gun.
Yeah, that is really kind of what, being in a Star Trek episode is kind of what drew my attention to the game. And it just wasn't, it didn't have that feel until I joined your games. And I still, to this day, I don't think I really have played this game with that feeling, unless we've got our normal crew going. I've tried playing it with other people, and it's the same kind of thing where it's like, it's just like they don't have that cinematic flavor for it,
Yeah, and you know what else helps too is like, when you're playing the game and you have a good captain driving the experience. And this is something I know from like doing media, and also like I ran events before. Like I ran this company called Hype the Station before I met you, and I was like captaining that event. Like I had to corral everybody to do like the tournament and like the media and photo ops. So I was always barking commands, and I get how important it is for clear commands and direction, and it happens in this game. And what I love is like it's not a crew with like hundreds of people on it or bots. It's the 5 essential roles: captain, pilot, weapons, science, and engineer, right? So like you said earlier, we all have our roles. It's just enough. It's just this co-op experience, and I just know things got to get done. And if I act the role, it kind of makes it feel better, because I used to hate getting like a weak captain, like yeah, let's just do that.
You know what to do is what I get that a lot. You know what to do, and if you don't know what to do, I'm gonna boot you. Like you get kicked out of my game if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what I love too. Like when I played with you, and it would come out naturally, like supernatural. Like when we were having a fight, and I'm seeing like the pilot sluggishly turn or maneuver, I'd know exactly like, Trusin, did they knock out engines? And you're like, yeah, engines are down. But like, see, I saw that the pilot struggling with the engines. I needed a status report. You gave me the report. Then you go fix it. Then the pilot can move. Then I say, put the shields up, take the weapons off. We got to get out of here. We're going to lose this fight. So it's awesome. Like if you guys are listening right now, whoever's listening to this, if you like what we're saying, if you like this like personal Star Trek episode that you can make with your friends, this game is it. We played Bridge Crew, we played Interstellar Rift is good. It's a good runner-up. But if you want that episodic, go ahead.
Interstellar Rift's missing the RPG aspect that this game has.
Yeah.
There's character progression in the sense that you have stat points that you put in specifically to your role that makes your role better. And that I think, and there's a storyline here, right? We're following a storyline, but what's nice about it too is there's like it's kind of like a whole season of Star Trek, right? There's little episodes that take place, but then there's this big overarching story that you're playing through, and it's really good. There's a lot of good things about it. What though would you say is its biggest down spot? The biggest negative on this game, I feel like, is because I want more of it, would be like on the ground. I like combat and shooting, and it doesn't have to be intense shooting, but I want more of it. And that's like the bad guys would have like a certain amount of spawns, which would be like 3 or 4 at a time, and that's your fight. And coming from like right now we're playing like First Descendant, or like when you play Destiny, things come and they reinforce themselves, and there's drop ships, and there's all this crazy stuff happening, and you have reasons to keep shooting and have shields and be picked up. This game just didn't have it. It's like walk through, kind of shoot a couple things, and continue with your mission. Yeah, I think the combat in this one is pretty lackluster. It's very, very bare and basic. If anything, can you imagine what Helldivers 2 or First Descendant combat in a game like this would be great, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, then I think that kind of goes in par. Like, there's a lot of good concepts, but they're kind of bare. I mean, you look at the consoles, right? The manipulation of the ship is great. The game mechanics for how the systems interact with each other are great, but the consoles are like, floating screens in the air. You know what I mean? Like, and you do see in some certain situations where I think there's one ship where they actually have the screens embedded into the meshes of the ship, and it looks really good, even with the crummy looking screens here. But it's kind of like that in a lot of parts of this game is it's like the core mechanic and fundamentals are so good, but it's just kind of thrown together. Like it's almost like it's a prototype game.
Well, I don't want to, if the developers ever hear this, I know there wasn't a lot of guys, and like the functionality and the gameplay was more important than polishing this or making it great or the presentation. Like the fact that it's here, you could turn off systems, you can do everything you need to do. It's just not like super polished, but you can do it. And that's what I'm happy about. It's like it's got all these systems that integrate with each other. The ship combat is fantastic. Anything in the ship is amazing. It's just, I feel like the ground missions, my God, dude, I love doing the away missions, and like there's archaeology and there's things to find and there's story pieces and there's even little mini set pieces that have their own stories. Like you find like a noodle shop randomly on a planet. Like it's great. It's just like, there's just not enough to do when you're down there. And I mean, like there's what in this game, there's these like Salvasi ciphers, which I love because our science officer Callie, she was like, she loved escape rooms, so we always like, all right, your point on these ciphers, it's almost like an escape room with your away team, and that was amazing gameplay. And the thing is, you had to be there for a little while figuring it out. That's nice because you're in the experience for a while, and that's what made it. When you just kind of like did your away missions and you kind of like blast through them, there's no more spawns. You know you're not in danger anymore. That's where I feel like it fell off. I would have loved just like, hey man, make some spawn points, make us sweat a little bit. Like we got to defend a hack point or something, like in First Ascendant.
Right, and it kind of, you get that in space combat, right? Like, space combat starts getting real hot, and you're like, I don't know if we're gonna make it. And the ground is like you either make it or things go down really fast, and you're just like, oh, somebody's dead, but I'm going to keep going and, win the day. But I can see that. I can feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wish the away team aspect was a little bit more robust with combat. The archaeology, I mean, like the Salvasi ciphers are great. If they had more of that, I just want more of essentially, you know what? I just want more of this game. I do. That's it. And if these guys could, if like, for instance, we always talk about this, and I'm going to just go ahead and open the cat in the bag. But like, if Pulsar had a baby with Interstellar Rift, and you threw that into the No Man's Sky procedural world engine, and you gave us missions like an Interstellar Rift, we'd have the perfect game.
Maybe not perfect, right? It's hard. I think perfection's a hard thing to reach for,
like,
but it would keep us entertained for a very, very long time, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know what, too? I wouldn't need, like, No Man's Sky is almost too much with these whole planets. You don't even utilize these whole planets.
Yeah.
Like, more like Helldivers, like a nice patch of land.
Right.
That if you dropped in, let's say, like, there's, like, a mineral or something you want to mine, but you got to get there and you got to secure it like a Helldiver. Then your engineers got to, like, create the area so you could mine it. And then, the weapons person's got to, like, keep it safe while, like, let's say the pilot with the jetpack is constantly scouting where the next threat is coming from. That would be dope. And then like once you establish it, you can consider it quote unquote like an asset and move on with your life. And now that's going to be like a little colony that you can get resources from.
Yeah. One day, maybe one day.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody listening, I am writing a book and a story specifically just to encompass all these elements so that it makes sense. So maybe, who knows? I say it now, and maybe that is something in the future, and this is where it was first public.
Yeah, I hope I know the devs for Pulsar are working on another project, and it looks like it might be smaller in scale, I think. But maybe I'm hoping they're just kind of taking a break from their universe here that they built, and they're going to come back to it and maybe give us a sequel or another version that kind of takes what they've got here and expands upon it or refines it, polishes it a little bit maybe. I
got good news in the patch notes. So the game that they're coming out with is like some artifact cleaning game. And from coming from Pulsar, you're like, how did you guys come up with that concept? And it's supposed to be like a humor game, so I'm sure you clean off the artifacts and there's funny things, how they got it, whatever. But I saw that they're working on titles, plural. That's the big word. Is it's not the next title, it's next titles.
It's kind of a tease, isn't it?
Yes. So I'm like, okay, it wasn't just artifact cleaning, because like maybe I could take that as a mini game for Pulsar 2, let's say. But they did such a good job with Pulsar here. Like, and no spoilers on the story, but the story does kind of wrap up pretty well. And I think, I don't know if would you call it Pulsar, or would you just call it something else? Like,
one thing I do admire about this game is that it has an end, because too often these days do these games come out and it's almost like they're not finished, and then they don't get finished. There's no ending, and this one at least has a completion. Like you can get through it and have an ending to your story, which is really nice.
And what's beautiful is like the name of the game, Pulsar, Lost Colony. You start getting hints of that lost colony, and man, when you start getting closer and closer, you almost feel like that national treasure hunt,
Yeah,
like this is it, guys, we're gonna find it.
Our regular group, we're still waiting to go in to find it. Yeah,
we get close though, and it's like, man, they did a good job.
They did.
And you know what, like, there's something to say about like an end, but like, for instance, like Destiny has seasons. I know people that play Destiny love Destiny. They've been playing it for years. It's almost like a 10-year-old game now. But they have seasons that end, which is nice, because you can do all the new content, you get some epic ending, or you get some really big fat part of the story, and you feel like you've completed something.
Oh,
and then
how good would that be if a game like this had seasons where there are some randomized procedural missions in the universe, but every year or so they release a new main storyline, right? Like.
Well, yeah, like think about it, like No Man's Sky's expeditions.
Right, exactly. That would have been awesome,
dude. Because I sign it every time there's a new expedition. I sign in. But imagine if it was like not No Man's Sky, but Pulsar.
Yeah,
guys, we got a new season, guys. Like, and like all the boys are lining up. Like, yo, I'll be there Friday. I'll be there Friday. Like that would be amazing. Because like, and it could be like different threats too. Like I know Destiny just throws some new freaking bad guy out of left field to be like, okay, this guy is like super bad guy, and he's really bad, and he's gonna be like the end boss at the end of raid, Yeah, it's kind of like a formula. It just keeps doing itself, and you just want to play the game anyway.
Right.
But yeah, Pulsar, I think, was a little bit more intellectual. Like, they could do archaeology, they could do battle, they could do movement. Let's say like maybe your pilot has to be like really important for a season, and you're filing through asteroids and all that stuff. They got so much to do.
Right, and I think one of the differences in those games, though, the season-based games, with the exception of No Man's Sky, is seasons are all monetized in some way. But they've released so many ships with this. I'm really surprised. Like, I would have been okay if they sold the ships. Ship access. I would have totally done that. I mean, they went with an unlocking method where you play the game and you unlock the ships, and I think that's great. But the price of this game was a low price of entry. I would have totally forked over $5 for ship access. And
go ahead, finish.
I mean, I think they kind of missed an opportunity to gain some revenue, which could have encouraged more momentum in developing this out further, or continuing it on. And maybe they are, and that's great. But I certainly hope that they, do something in the line of some type of good pricing or monetization to support their hard work.
Well, I did see when this game came out years ago, like 2016, 2017, there was a big to-do about, DLC and how exploitive it was, and they wanted to be honorable. And I get that. And they were honorable because, you know what? I couldn't buy DLC, but I have bought this game for at least 9-10 of my friends just to support the dev. I'm like, I got to give them my money somehow. And I mentioned, like, I actually made a forum post for them on this, but I'm like, you could have made like red alert sounds, like something that sounds like a submarine, like, like, just have fun with it. Like, have red alert sounds. You could have made custom uniforms, things that don't affect the game, but I can give you a couple bucks here and there just to keep going.
Yeah.
And because I do that with other games. Like, I put money into First Descendant. I put tons of money into Paladins. I don't mind, and especially if I'm enjoying the game over and over and over, I don't mind.
There is such a thing as too much, but yeah, I mean, if you've got if you're selling a $60 game, I don't want to see everything monetized. But if you're selling a $20 game, you can have some minor monetizations in there. Like that's okay. That's okay in my book. So, yeah, I didn't know that we were going to end up talking about gaming industry monetization.
We're talking about Pulsar, man. We're talking about if you love a space game, what do you do to keep that space game going? What do you do to channel the devs to make content that'll keep the space game going? Like that's essentially what we're talking about. Because like maybe they made this game just for the ship content, because it seems like the ships are super polished, like the combat, the shields, the weapons. But when you get down to the ground, maybe they weren't really trying to make a first-person shooter. It's there, but the love was on the ship. Which I do love.
Well, and that's another thing I really love about this kind of game, and what I think in games that precede this should really focus on is how the ship feels like a character too. And it's a character we all share, right? Because it has equipment, and you can change that equipment. You can upgrade that equipment. You can, have different programs loaded. You can, there's just, it has its own progression. And I think that's really important than just having a ship, that feels like any other ship, right? And it doesn't really make you feel like doesn't make you feel like home, right? Like that ship becomes your home, and it's great.
It definitely does. I mean, Interstellar Rift does a great job of doing that, which we'll probably talk at another podcast about that. But like, even for instance, like now that we're talking about that, in Paladins, you can have different announcers. Can you imagine if you were able to buy voices for the computer of the ship, like red alert? It says like that, proximity alert, missile incoming. It could have been like a sexy UK British voice. It could be like your bro. It could be, there's so many voices.
That's
you can have.
Easy to do now with AI too. Like you could easily incorporate that kind of stuff. And I'm really surprised that there aren't give me an AI voice in these ships, please.
I mean, I'm sure there's a language barrier, but if it's AI now, you can do AI in whatever language,
Yeah, I would love that. Absolutely.
But there's so much, if there's another game, there's so much, please, a Split Polygon and Leafy Games, please talk to each other. There's so much potential between those two companies. I know Split Polygon wasn't a big team either. Leafy Games was 2-3 guys, I believe, at their peak. But there's so much potential between the two of your games and the concepts that, first of all, building your ship. I know Leafy Games built this and they did a great job. But man, there is also something you engineer insane ships in Interstellar Rift, and it's great to see your project. And then I love flying it. So
I think I've spent more hours in Interstellar Rift building ships than I have playing the game. And somebody told me that how bad that was. And I said, well, no, I said building the ships for me is playing the game. So
yeah.
I don't feel like I've missed out on anything. So
no, and we're still playing it too. So
yeah.
What else about this game, man? What's off the cuff that you could think about that you really appreciated?
Well, let's see. One of the things is, and we kind of mentioned it briefly, which was the ship components and ship upgrades.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, it's amazing that you can upgrade your engines, you can upgrade your reactor, you can upgrade your shields. You get so many different ship systems that you can change, and sometimes it's not just where things are getting better, but it's like trade-offs, right? It's like okay, well, this one can get really hot, and the hotter it gets, the more power you have to work with. There's a trade-off where you want your engine to run hot, right? And you're in a risk zone when you do that. If I'm teetering on the edge of overheating, but that I get the most power out of my ship when I do that, that's the trade-off there. Or you could go the other way and say, hey, this one doesn't heat up as much, but you're not going to get as much power out of it. I love having to make those kinds of choices in games. It is a little off-putting though with this one in the sense that there are some equipment combinations that basically can make my role obsolete.
Yeah. But that's all kudos to you were saying earlier. It gives the ship a personality. Like you're putting the personality and the play style into the ship depending on like the items that you put on it. Like I do know that there's an item that like will give you double the hull, but then like reduce your shields. So like you're more about repairing rather than keeping your shields up. Who knows? There's different
Wow.
places.
And you save a lot of power not having to recharge shields.
Exactly. So that could be like the thing, or you have like a shield that recharges really fast. It just doesn't have a lot of shields. That's why you like have a lot of hull. So that shield will go up, real quick, but every time it gets tapped, it goes all the way down. So things like that are in this game. And man, like if you are a space nerd, if you like Star Trek or Orville or any of these other space sort of simulation type, like there's sci-fi, but they could be real. And that's what we love about Star Trek is that, like, essentially it's like a Navy in space. And Gene Roddenberry, with that futurologist view of the future, did a really good job of what would it actually be like, because you don't get that from Star Wars. A lot of Star Wars fanboys out there, which is more like the culture on the ground and between the characters. But I mean, Star Trek and some of these other shows, like for instance Battlestar Galactica, like they do a great job of what it's like to voyage in space, and that's more of the target. And this game does that fantastic.
Oh, it does it excellent. One thing and I think a lot of games that we've played so many space games, and one thing that I've noticed that is common amongst most of them, if not all of them, is the lack of things to do in your downtime or while you're traveling, right? Like the heat of the battle, when there's a battle going on and everybody's got something to do and everything's great, and we were talking about like that, like earlier, using the quarters for something or needing, or regular maintenance of things in between, like I feel like there should be things to do, because oftentimes I think this is where you might even lose some players if there's 5 minutes in between conflicts and there's 2 or 3 people standing around with nothing to do, and it's kind of like what are we supposed to do? I think there could be some more guidance there, not just in Pulsar but in almost every space game we've played where traversing the cosmos is a thing. It's like, how do you keep people engaged and busy during those transit times or in between?
I want to give kudos to one game that we played, Void Crew, whereas operating the ship, those trim valves, they would always go out and need to be rotated. Like the way you charge the warp drives, the way you had to clean up the trim, the way you had to reload your guns. An Interstellar Rift has that a little bit too, but not as much. You have way more control in Interstellar Rift, but in Void Crew, there's like maintenance. Like everybody's got to pitch in real quick to do something in between the battles or like the new episode zones. So I mean, there's plenty of games out there. We got Dropship coming up soon. Jump Ship, excuse me.
Jump Ship. Yeah, that one looks good.
So that's going to be an episode in itself.
Oh, and Starship Simulator is on the radar.
Absolutely, yeah. So so what do we got? Maybe we should start closing up here for those. I'm sure anybody listening to this is also a fan of Pulsar, and you found us via like the discussion forums or whatever the case may be. But coming up probably in the future, most likely, we're going to give No Man's Sky a whole episode. Starship Simulator's on the way. We're going to talk about Jump Ship. We're going to talk about Interstellar Rift. We definitely have to have one of those. Get it. It was cheap for the space sale. We don't even know if this is like time this episode. What else is coming out, Drew?
Well, I mean, Star Citizen's been coming out for over a decade, so
I would forget to mention that one. It's just a fact of life at this point. The Star Engine is beautiful, though.
Oh yeah, Star Engine's awesome. So yeah, there's that one, and I think you mentioned most of the other ones that's on my radar anyway.
And we love survival crafts, another space survival craft. We played Eden Crafters.
Crafters, yeah, and that launching out. What is it?
That's next month.
Next
right?
month, October. Yeah, October. Yeah.
So we did Eden Crafters. We played Planet Crafters. We love that. And we're not going to go into it because it'd be too much. But we're just letting our audience know, hey, if you like us, you like what we're talking about, this is what we're getting into. Again, survival craft, and we'll do like medieval survival crafts too, like Lord of the Rings. You're playing Moria right now. What I like about survival crafts is it does feel like we're just a new crew on a planet. doesn't matter. I still feel like it's a sci-fi for me because it's like I'm on a different planet. What do I do while I'm here?
I was thinking today, I was like, I think Captain would actually like the Satisfactory game, which I know it seems mostly like factory building, and it is, but you're on an alien planet, and there's combat, and there's exploration, and there's even a little science. And I'm like,
Give it a shot.
I think this would fit in with us.
I'll give it a shot, man. Why don't we wrap it here? I don't know what your timer's at, but hey, look, guys, if you like us, if you like Pulsar, everything that we talked about, the theory about space games, space combat, survival craft stuff, please give us a like, a follow, and stay with us. And we are very accessible to you right now while we're new, so look us up. I'll talk to you, right?
Well, yeah, thanks for chatting with me, Cap. And
of course, Trusin.
Yeah.
You've been my friend forever, and I'm glad we're finally like working on a project here with like the games that we love.
Oh, yeah, passion. All right,
Yes.
buddy. I'll talk to you
All
next
right,
time.
man. Take it easy, bud.
Astro-Nots, a space-bound team, navigating galaxies from our PC screens, exploring new worlds and cosmic sights. Join our crew.